Do you ever feel stuck and overwhelmed by all of those big feelings at home and you're just wondering how to make it through when it comes to either your toddler or your teenager or anything in between? This episode today is for you because we have a special guest, Dr. Alissa Jerud, here with us that teaches us how to manage those things in more effective ways with science-backed tools. And she has incredible tools and stories to teach us how to apply it right now. So stay tuned. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's rock and talk. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest, Alissa Jerud, that is here with us, and she's a licensed clinical psychologist, clinical assistant professor of psychology in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Pennsylvania, and author of Emotion-Savvy Parenting. In her private practice, Dr. Jerud specializes in exposure-based treatments for anxiety-related disorders, including OCD, PTSD, social anxiety, panic disorder, specific phobias, and generalized anxiety, as well as dialectical behavioral therapy or DBT training skills. She's passionate about helping parents and families learn to accept, regulate, and tolerate their emotions and their children's. Dr. Jerud also trains clinicians in exposure-based therapies and frequently delivers workshops on anxiety, stress, mental health, parenting, and social support. And she is a mother of two. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, Alissa.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words. Like, how did you get to this space? What do you love about it?
So I am a therapist, a clinical psychologist, and I really enjoy working with other people to help them live more fulfilling, rewarding lives. I primarily treat anxiety-related disorders and emotion regulation difficulties using highly effective evidence-based treatments. And I especially enjoy bringing those kind of treatments, those approaches, the skills that we know are so effective at helping people better manage their emotions. I really enjoy bringing those to parents in particular, and obviously find them very helpful in my own day-to-day life raising two kids.
Oh, do you mind if I ask how old they are?
Yeah, my daughter is 12 and my son is 8.
Oh, nice. I have 4 children, and this kind of thing comes up a lot for all the ages, especially I feel for probably freshmen and sophomores. I feel like they are just in the thick of that emotional struggle. And I know a lot of listeners will be really excited to hear what you have to share with us today and how you help people, whether that's the parents or the kids. Do you mind just, I guess before we jump into that, tell me a little bit about your book, Emotion Savvy Parenting. What's that all about?
Yeah, my book is really geared toward parents specifically. And really, what we know is that we are, as human beings, whether we're parents or not, we are wired to want to avoid pain, whether that is physical pain, right? If our hand's in the fire, we want to pull it out, or some kind of emotional pain. And parenting, as glorious and beautiful as it is, also comes with a lot of emotional pain or discomfort, uncomfortable, unwanted emotions that we as parents feel ourselves. with our kids, and obviously that our kids sometimes feel too. And again, thinking about the fact that we are wired to want to avoid pain, it makes so much sense that at times we might try to not feel those uncomfortable emotions as parents. And unfortunately, oftentimes those very understandable, natural responses that we have to emotional discomfort, trying to avoid it, actually tend to backfire and maintain and exacerbate it over time. And so my book is really aiming to help parents relate more skillfully to those unwanted emotions that come up. And so to do, I aim to help parents, instead of trying to control our kids or change our kids' behaviors, I really aim to try to help parents change their own behaviors. And so that's really the gist of it.
That reminds me of a time my son, he was premature and I waited probably too long for, what was it? Some type of therapy. She wanted to work with me predominantly. And I was like, you're just supposed to like help him move and do those things. You don't need me. But it
Right.
often comes down to the parents, like working with them. And I'm like, okay, maybe the more that she worked with me, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely a part of this problem. I could definitely improve this for sure.
And if you think about it, the only behavior that we can truly control is our own behavior, right? And so oftentimes, again, those attempts to avoid our own emotional discomfort leave us trying to change our kids. And they either push back and start doing more of the things that are upsetting us or challenging for us, or it can just create distance between us. It might feel invalidating for the kids. And so when we focus on changing ourselves, that's where we can actually see some progress, because that's something in our control, something we can do.
Absolutely. I'm curious about this too. Do you see with a lot of the parents that you work with, like you mentioned control, but what about enabling? Is it one or the other, or how does that show up? And do you find like enabling is also tied to that anxiety or that overwhelm for parents too, or the kids?
For sure. I think the thing is, as parents, our kids are our world. We love them so much. And sometimes it can crack our hearts open to see them in distress. Yeah, we want to swoop in. So if our kid is feeling sad, we want to talk them out of it. Or if they're feeling anxious about a test, we maybe decide, oh, you know what? You don't have to go to school today. We want to do something. They don't have to feel so uncomfortable, because their discomfort is making us feel so uncomfortable. And yet, unfortunately, that can also backfire. Like you're saying, in some ways, enables the behavior, it reinforces that behavior and teaches kids that maybe they can't cope with those uncomfortable feelings themselves. It also, for us, teaches the same thing, right? That the only way we can cope in these challenging moments is to find a quick fix, even if that quick fix might not be so effective in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. So you wrote this book, Emotion Savvy Parenting, and
Mhm.
how long ago did you publish this book?
It actually comes out on Wednesday.
Oh,
So,
wonderful.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, May 7th is the official release date.
So I'm sure that feels incredible to get that out there, to be able to help people, help your clients, help your parents really take that to the next level. So talk us through that a little bit. You mentioned some of the things you talk about in there. What can we find in there that can help us? Are there tools? Are there stories? What do you teach in here that we can apply pretty quickly as we read that?
Yeah, so I really try to make the book as relatable, practical as possible. So I pack it with powerful real life anecdotes that are either based on my own, they're true stories from my own life with my kids and my own struggles, because I am not a perfect parent by any means. And sometimes struggle to regulate my own emotions. And so I am very open and honest with stories from my own life there. And I also bring in stories from patients, friends, family members as well. And I purposely, just to note, like, I don't share anyone's personal story. I actually use composites. So like a mix of stories from different people, and try to really make it very anonymous so that no one can actually be picked out of the book in any way. But those stories are in there. And then in addition to that, I have a really like science informed framework to help parents. And so it is one that is rooted in a lot of, again, theories from really science backed theories from clinical psychology around how to relate to those unhelpful emotions, really with at the heart of the kind of book being the idea that we can feel strong, painful, unwanted emotions and still show up in a way that's effective and consistent with who we want to be as parents and people. And then to help parents do that, right, to show up in those ways, I provide really a number of science-backed strategies or skills to help parents regulate their emotions. So I have a framework called the ART tools that I use, which stand for accept, regulate, and tolerate. And those are different tools to help parents accept their emotions, their thoughts, their physical sensations, their environment, what their kids are doing, all of those things to bring about increased acceptance. And I'm happy to talk more about that if you'd like. I'll just note, though, I also have, the tool to help parents regulate their emotions, which are essentially tools for how to go about first making it kind of less likely that parents are going to experience painful, unwanted emotions in the first place. And so that if they do, and those emotions aren't serving them as well or all that well, right? How can they go about changing those emotions? And then finally, the tolerate skills are about when there are really strong emotions on board that really can't be changed. How can parents sit with those without making the situation worse, without doing something that they're going to later regret? So those are the skills.
Oh, I love that. Accept, regulate, and tolerate. That I can imagine how that'd be very helpful. Yeah. Just a quick story. I had my daughter's graduation party on Saturday, and I forget until you're around a family that you haven't been around for a while, extended family. You start to see those patterns. You start to be more activated. You start to feel a lot of feelings that you haven't been around for or really felt that fully before. Plus, you had a stressful situation, a lot is going on. And it was just really interesting to observe how everybody was responding. Different family members, lots of activation, and thinking oh yeah, it would be good to review some of these things before any family event or brush up on some of those skills that I'm sure a lot of people are facing this time of year.
Couldn't agree with that more, in large part because even though I wrote this book for parents, these are skills that we can use in all relationships, and not even just in relationships, but just in our day-to-day when, something frustrating happens in our own lives, or we're feeling sad, we're feeling overwhelmed. These are skills that can help us better navigate those emotions.
Absolutely. Do you mind sharing maybe a hypothetical situation, or even better, maybe a personal situation where you could walk us through how you apply art to that? Can you think of something?
I'm happy to do so, certainly. But I should note, there are a number of mini skills essentially within each of those sets of skills. It might be helpful for me to go over those or note those a little bit, though oftentimes these skills work best when paired in conjunction with one another. For instance, under the tolerate skill, sometimes if let's say you're feeling a really strong emotion, you're really angry about something your kid has just done, right? Maybe they've broken something really important. They made a huge mess. They failed a test, or they're fighting with their sibling, whatever it is. So they're doing something like that. What tends to happen for many of us is we get very activated, like you're saying, right? Our heart rates are through the roof and we are heated and we are just we're hot. We want to go in there and tell our kid to shape up, do better, whatever it might be, yell at them, punish them. And so that's where the tolerate skills probably are going to be most useful first, because oftentimes in those moments, it's like we're being hijacked by our emotion. And so we can't even think all that clearly to try to change the emotion. There's really not much we can do in that moment other than something that will hopefully rapidly reduce some of that arousal. And so there's a set of skills that I have in the book that I call the care skills. Those are under the tolerate umbrella, right? And the care skills, it's an acronym that stands for cool with ice, activate your body, relax your muscles, exhale slowly. And those skills are really designed to work rapidly to bring down arousal. So you might say in a moment like that, use one of the care skills for briefly, just to be able to almost get your brain back so you can think about what you might do next. Then maybe you take a moment to, under the accept skills, there's mindfulness, just to maybe mindfully notice what's going on in your body, what you're feeling in that moment, what you're thinking, just to notice, oh, I'm having these thoughts that my kids are idiots, or whatever those thoughts are that maybe aren't so helpful, just to notice those. Oh yeah, I'm having that thought, so that maybe you aren't treating that thought as such a fact, right? And you're not necessarily you're not following up on that thought. You're not letting that thought dictate what you do or don't do ideally in that moment. And then maybe you could think about using a skill to potentially change the situation a little bit, right? And so under the The regulate skills are a number of different skills. But let's say maybe part of the reason you're having such a big reaction is because you actually haven't eaten lunch yet and it's 2 o'clock and you're starving. Then maybe it might be worth, before even doing anything, before addressing the situation, grabbing a quick bite of something to eat to help you regulate. Maybe it's worth taking a look at some of the thoughts you're having and seeing if maybe there might be a reframe that you could give yourself, right? That might be helpful so that you don't fly off the handle. And then maybe, depending on where you are, you might need to circle back to a different skill. Maybe you go back to mindfulness or you go on to a different distress tolerance skill, because there are a number of different distress tolerance skills that I talk about in the book. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I think what's neat is that we know that when it comes to our emotions, there are actually many different components to our emotions, like so many components that make up each emotion. And what's nice about that is there are so many points for intervention. And so we can think about, okay, given the different components, like which of these tools might I want to bring in this given moment in time to help me get through this moment, ideally, again, without doing something I'm later going to regret.
Yeah. So really breaking it down and looking at it from different angles. Like I love how you give lots of different tools, lots of different things you can remember quickly, acronyms like CARE. So if I understand, I didn't get it all, but cool with ice, active, what was this?
Activate your body,
Activate your body, relax
your muscles, and exhale slowly. And if you want, I can walk you through each of those a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. So cool with ice is really something that we can do to, again, rapidly reduce our heart rate. And so this, I should note, it really can drastically reduce the heart rate so much that if anyone listening has some kind of a medical condition, in particular a heart condition, I would recommend talking with your doctor first before using this skill, because it might not be safe for you to do. But if you're able to use this skill, it can work by evoking what's called the dive reflex, which is what our bodies are wired to experience submerged in cold water. So if we're in very cold water, our heart rates stop pumping blood to our extremities in order to conserve energy and heat our cores. And so we can actually elicit that same reflex or that same reaction by putting cold ice or water on our face. And that can really slow down the heart rate, which when you think about it, when you're hijacked by an emotion, oftentimes your heart rate is just pounding. And so this can be a way to cool things off at least a smidge. So you can either get a flexible gel ice pack and put it over your eyes, cheekbones, and temples, leave it there for about 30 seconds. Or if you want and you're willing to get a little messy, you can get a bowl of cold water and dunk your head into that bowl of cold water. 30 seconds, and you can see your heart rate drop by 50% or more in those 30 seconds. So it's pretty cool with ice. Activate your body. In some ways, does the opposite. It's like we're first getting our heart rate up in order to then have it come down. So you can do some intense aerobic exercise for 20 or 30 minutes. If you have less time, that's fine too. If you just want to do a quick dance party in the bedroom or something like that, or go and run around your yard for a minute, that could still be helpful. But the idea is that if we get our heart rates up, there's this natural heart rate recovery that occurs after exercise. So our heart rates will naturally fall and we can feel and notice that difference. And when we exercise, that also allows us to release some of that pent up energy we may be feeling. So that's activate your body. Relax your muscles is really about first tensing your muscles to bring on the tension so that when you then relax your muscles, you can actually feel the difference. Because if you just try to relax your muscles without tensing them first, it's hard to feel all that much relaxation. But if you first tense them and then release them, you'll notice a greater sense of relaxation. So that's relax your muscles. You can do that whether it's individual muscle groups or all of your muscles all at once for 3 or 4 seconds, and then release them for 3 or 4 seconds. And then the final skill, exhale slowly, is designed to help, again, reduce your heart rate. Because oftentimes what happens when we're feeling pretty activated, we're experiencing some strong emotion, we tend to start breathing faster than we need to. And that speeds up our heart rates. And oftentimes what you'll hear when somebody's emotionally upset, they're dysregulated, they'll either be told to take a deep breath or they'll try to take a deep breath themselves. But when we breathe in, our heart rates actually speed up. And it's really on the exhalation or the exhale that our heart rates slow down. So one way that we can calm our bodies down, reduce our heart rate, is to take a normal breath in for 3 or 4 seconds, a really slow breath out for, I usually say, about 5 or 7 seconds. And then we can even slow down that process a little further to even further calm us down by holding our breath for another 3 or 4 seconds before taking that next inhalation. And obviously, it's not like a natural way of breathing. That's not how most of us breathe. So, with all of these skills in the book, I say that the more you practice them, ideally at times of calm when you're not already dysregulated, the more likely it is that in the heat of the moment, you're going to be able to use these skills because you're going to have trained your body, your brain to be able to turn to these skills.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that will definitely help, especially in parenting, just quick ways that you can help your kids or even you if you're feeling activated. I love stories, but thinking about different ways my kids respond. I have 4 of them and an exchange students are often 5, and seeing how anxiety will pop up in them. Like sometimes with my sons in particular, they get a little more angry and I don't even recognize it as feeling anxious or activated for them first. But my daughter is very much typical, like starting to hyperventilate a little bit, breathe a little faster, just getting tense and just like they feel backed into a corner and super overwhelmed and about to explode. So walk us through that a little bit, if you wouldn't mind. Maybe parents resonate with that. Maybe they have the tense, angry kid. Maybe they have that kid that's just starting to breathe really rapidly. What do we do in that moment where we just feel like they're not hearing us? We can't really reach them and they're about to just lose it. How can we help?
Oh, such a great question. So I think the big thing that I would say is that just like I want to help parents learn to relate differently to painful and unwanted emotions in themselves, I want to help them do so in their kids too. Again, if you think about the fact that we want to tend to avoid those uncomfortable emotions, instead I want to help parents welcome those rather than try to tamp them down, fix those emotions in their kids. Imagine what it would be like if we just let those emotions be there, knowing that no emotion can last forever, going to have run its natural course. And I will also note in particular for anxiety that oftentimes when we try to use skills like the care skills, that can actually backfire. So I say that the care skills are fabulous for all emotion other than anxiety, because anxiety really pulls heavily for avoidance. When we're feeling anxious, we want to try to avoid that emotion. We want to try to avoid the situation that's causing that anxiety. And that can actually maintain and exacerbate anxiety in the long run, even though the avoidance might help in the moment. So I say when feeling anxious and you're hyperventilating, don't do anything to try to control that breathing. Let that hyperventilating be and kind of let whatever anxiety provoking thoughts are there as well be there, right? That maybe they're true, but not do anything to try to control them. So I think one of the best things we can do as parents is just to when kids are, whether they're feeling anxious or they're angry, I think we can validate the emotion. Not even if it doesn't make sense to us, if we think it's nothing to be anxious or upset about, we can still validate, wow, this seems really hard. You're really upset or really anxious about this. I see that. And just let them know you're here for them, right? I'm here for you. You can say, what, if anything, can I do that might be helpful? And maybe there's nothing, or maybe they just want to vent, or maybe they want to cry in your arms and you can do that for them. But you don't have to fix the emotion. You can just be more the support person as they go through this really challenging emotion.
That is such a good reminder. And even as a counselor, you just want to hop in when it's your child to fix that and resist that fixing response, to just get through that quickly, whether it's we have to get you to school, we have to do this, we have to do that, letting go a little bit of that control. I love that reminder, just to validate, remind them that you're here for them and just allow them to feel those feelings. I have shared this before with listeners, but I remember my younger daughter, I was asking her something after the fact when she was really activated. What is it I can do to help more in the future when you're feeling really overwhelmed like that? She said, Mom, sometimes I just need you to just rub my back and just hug me, just be there for me, because sometimes, I don't even remember how she said it, but like her sister has a lot of panic attacks like that sometimes. And her sister will do that. We'll just make space for her to calm down, where I've got a schedule to keep sometimes with the kids. Right. Yep. And it was a good reminder. Oh yeah, just give her that time, because usually it's not as big of a time that it needs to be, especially for doing those things that you talk about, that validation, that making space for that, just not rushing them. But as a parent, sometimes that is hard to remember, right?
Yeah. And I just want to say, I love that you circled back after a hard moment, right? Because even in that moment, sometimes your kid can't even tell you what they want you to do in that moment. They may be so flooded themselves that it's just hard to even think about that. But after the fact, right, that's a time where they would be able to think a little more clearly about what might be helpful. And who knows, you might try that the next time they're really upset and they may want none of it. But at least you can give it a shot because they told you that's what they would like. And then again, you can circle back if you need to after the fact and try to come up with something
Right.
else for next time around.
And that's a great point too, because my older daughter, she does not want to be touched when she's feeling really upset.
Yep.
So it just depends on the kid, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those tips. So what might be helpful for parents to know about emotions that they may not already know?
So I think the big thing, like I alluded to earlier, is that our emotions really are much more complex than many of us realize. And actually, before even getting to that point, I will also note that all emotions, even those ones that we'd so much rather not have, are normal and natural, and we're all going to experience them. And so again, that's where this idea of trying to relate more skillfully to those emotions comes in, that instead of trying to avoid them or say dread them, those are ones I never want to have to feel, we can instead welcome them when they show up and learn that we don't have to let those emotions call the shots. Because if you think about it, our feelings are always coming and going. And if we allow those fleeting feelings to govern our behavior in any given moment, life would get pretty erratic. And so we can let those emotions be there, see them as helpful guides, but not need to let them hop into the driver's seat of our car and take over. So I think that's one big thing. And then related to that too, is that when feeling those strong emotions, we can remember that there are so many components that go into an emotion. So I could talk about those. I know we're limited on our time together, but we could talk. There are different components. And because there are so many different components that make up an emotion, there are so many points for intervention. So sometimes it can feel like it's off. Now I'm experiencing this emotion that, of course, I'm experiencing. There's nothing to do about it. But there are actually so many skills that we can use to help us in those really difficult moments so that we can show up in a way that we can later feel proud of.
Yeah. I'm again thinking about this weekend with noticing in other people, noticing in myself, like again, those milestones or those big family gatherings as being one of those. And I love how you talk about just normalizing it. Sometimes you go into that too much, what's wrong, and go into that shame, that blame, that guilt, instead of just recognizing, hey, this is like a normal time to experience a variety of emotions coming up, whether it's for me or other family members. And you don't have to just sit there in that space, but there's things you can do. So if you wouldn't mind, but say in a situation like that, maybe somebody has a birthday party, maybe it's a graduation party, or whatever. They're
Mhm.
noticing that they are feeling like these highs and lows. You mentioned care, but what if they're feeling like, say, resentful if people aren't showing up how they think they should show up? What do they do in that situation?
Yeah. I just want to note too, before I even answer that, that it's just like hard being a human being, right? And these emotions that we feel are really hard to deal with sometimes. And so I want to also give permission, even though I'm saying that there are skills we can use to help us be skillful in these challenging moments. It's also okay if sometimes you're not able to use them. You forget to use them. You're not your best self, right? That's going to happen. We all sometimes make mistakes. And so I think if you're in a moment where you're just like stewing resentment, one, ideally, meet yourself with some compassion, right? That, yeah, this is hard. And just about anyone in my shoes would probably find this really hard. And if you can, aim for acceptance there. Acceptance of the fact that you're struggling, that you're feeling resentful, because that's normal and natural and understandable. And maybe even acceptance of the other people who are there and how they're showing up. And that can be a really hard pill to swallow. It's hard to just accept our kids sometimes and their behaviors. And it's so hard, especially when we feel like there are these adults in our lives who have fully developed brains and yet they're acting in these ways that are so not okay with me. It can be hard to accept that. But I think if we can come at this from a place of understanding that all behavior has a cause, right? There were things that happen in their lives that are leading them to act in this way. Just like there are things that happen in your life that are leading these feelings to come up for you. And if we can accept that, that can actually ease our suffering a little bit, because oftentimes the should statements that we make about how things should look, the judgments we put on to our reality, actually turn that ordinary pain that may be really painful and not fun to sit with, but it can turn that to extreme suffering, right? That we don't have to feel. So if we can let go of those judgments, practice mindfulness, that's a skill that can help us be more accepting. That can be really powerful.
Definitely. So really focusing on that acceptance piece, which I love. I feel like you could go into that one thing so much, but a mantra that I often tell myself is love them where they're at. I like to tell myself that when I feel activated with family members. We're all on a different journey. Some days we're like a little bit higher up there, just like seeing things a little more clearly. But you said something similar, like all behavior has a cause. I love that you're speaking to that and something that we can all remember. There's so much I could ask you and pick your brain about, but for the sake of time, do you mind sharing any last things that you feel like are really helpful with clients that are like this aha moment that takes them to that next level of helping them when it comes to emotions and deepening maybe their life fulfillment?
But I think sometimes it just happens when they realize over and over again that the things they're doing just aren't working. Those attempts to control are leaving them feeling more and more out of control. That's often when an aha moment will take place. I think the big thing I really just want to stress one more time is that, again, as parents, we're going to make mistakes. That's okay. For the parents I work with, I know that it can be really easy when we feel like we know better to then beat ourselves up when we mess up in some way. And usually that doesn't usually work all that well for us because we tend to not be our best selves when we're feeling bad about ourselves, right? And so if we're beating ourselves up, it's going to be hard to show up in a better way, a more skillful way down the road. So I think, again, having compassion for yourself when you mess up. Even in the book, I talk about skills that we can use when we have fallen short in some way. We've done something we regret to help us better understand what happened, what led us astray, how we might be able to do better down the road, and to even repair with our kids. So I think those are also things that we can use in those moments. So that's just something I wanted to make sure to say before.
I love that. Very helpful. All of these things when it comes to acceptance, regulating, tolerating, validating, that care thing that you talked about. Just a lot of beautiful reminders on how we can help when it comes to those emotions. So you mentioned your book, Emotion Savvy Parenting. Where can we find that? Where can we find you if we want more information or want to check your stuff out?
Yeah, so my book will be available to purchase. It's actually available for pre-order now. It officially releases on Wednesday, May 7th. You can get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or the publisher, Routledge. You can get it online. It will be in some bookstores. And then in terms of me, you can find me at my website, AlissaJerud.com, or on Instagram at EmotionSavvyDoc.
Oh, I love it. And we'll put all of that in the show notes so they can check it out as well. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Alissa. I really appreciate everything you had to share today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening today, my friends. Don't forget to check us out on social media. You can find us on Instagram at Fulfillment Therapy and on Facebook at Fulfillment Therapy, as well as Pinterest. And check that out in the show notes for those daily reminders on how to take your mental health and wellness to the next level each day. We'll see you back here every Monday and Thursday with a new episode. Until then.
Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you. No matter what your house or your hair looks like, I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.